Okay. So the monthly Extension Master Gardener Coordinator discussions, these are topics that help us as Master Gardener volunteer coordinators. They maybe help us as county extension faculty or state faculty. And we have opportunities for presentations next year. So if anyone is interested in doing a presentation or highlighting your program, let me know and we can schedule that. We always have our webinars the third Wednesday of the month at 2 p.m. Eastern, which is sort of a convenient time for most folks around the country. But if you can't make a webinar, we do post them online. And so what I have here is the create.extension.org website, and all of you should be able to see that. But this is where we post the archived recordings and the handouts that go for each presentation. Have you all seen this before? Or if this is new to you, it would be great if you could put that in the chat box and let me know if this is the first time you've seen it. So on this site, you will find access to the Zoom meeting phone number and ID. We post the links to the recordings on this site. They're also posted on YouTube. There's the YouTube address. And here you can see the archived recordings for this year, starting in January and going through until August. You can also see what we have coming up. We've got Nicole Sanchez in Oregon, some presentations in October and November, and we'll do an open forum in December. Also, you might want to make sure you're subscribing to the e-news blast, which I think many of you are if you received this email. And we do have a few archive discussions down at the bottom of this page from previous years. We are working on this and trying to collate all of that information and get it together in a better organized system, so give us some time for that. But there are some other useful things down here at the bottom of this page. Okay. Go ahead and pull up the presentation. Okay, so today we're going to talk about creating a visioning session for your Master Gardener program. We'll have a few announcements and then we'll wrap up at the end with Q&A. As with most webinars, if you need to get off the call, you can, and we'll continue to record. If you want to hang on and ask questions, we can take as much time as you need. So a few announcements. Many of you attended the National Extension Master Gardener Coordinator Conference in Madison, Wisconsin, and that was a really great opportunity to meet each other, to talk about our programs, and to get lots of ideas. And if you did attend, don't forget to complete the demographic form and the conference evaluation. It takes about 10 minutes probably to do the evaluation, but the great thing is that your feedback can help plan the 2020 National Extension Master Gardener Coordinator Conference, which will be in Tennessee. The other thing I wanted to show you is Mike Maddox. I think I posted the link in the chat box. Mike has linked to the conference materials. He recorded many of the presentations. And so if you were able to attend the conference, this is a great resource for you. But if you weren't able to make it to Madison this year for the coordinators conference, I definitely recommend going to the website and accessing those materials. Or if you are a state coordinator or a county coordinator, you can send this out to your colleagues. There is a lot of great information that will be helpful to you, and you'll get good ideas too. So Mike and his team in Wisconsin have done a great job with giving us that information and following up after the conference. Also, there is the Extension Master Gardener Resource Repository, and they are looking for reviewers. And I'll post a link when Ann does her presentation so you all can have access to that if you would like to serve as a reviewer. And a few other announcements. Coming up on August 30th, Brooke Edmonds is doing a webinar on the latest research on bees from Oregon State University. That information is included in the e-news blast. And then in May of next year, the National Extension Conference on Volunteerism takes place in Billings, Montana. That's a wonderful conference. I went when it was in Asheville, learned a lot and met great people. And also next year in June, the International Master Gardener Conference will be in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. So those resources should be online now, and you can access the conference information and maybe consider attending some of those programs. Any questions? Okay, all right, I don't see any questions. Any other announcements? Okay. All right. So the upcoming webinars that we have scheduled in September, we have Nicole Sanchez. She'll be talking about a citizen science project for Master Gardeners, and they're working in collaboration with the Oregon Bee Project. In October, I will be presenting with one of our Master Gardeners, Judy Hanna, and it's how to host an Extension Master Gardener job fair, and the purpose is to increase retention rates, increase engagement, and confidence among our volunteers. And then in November, this is perfect timing, but we have Tim Tanner talking about extension work-life balance. I know generally for us in Florida, November, December is when all our reports are due. I'm sure it's the same for all of you all as well. So maybe this would be a nice webinar to tune into, or you might want to listen to the archived recording in December after your reports are finished, and then plan for work-life balance next year. All right, we'll do a quick poll. Could you tell us in the chat box what state you're from? Okay, we have folks from all over the country today. We have North Carolina, Arizona, welcome, Florida, Washington, Delaware, North Carolina, Georgia, Virginia, Colorado, Iowa, Arizona, Connecticut, California, Tennessee. We've got a great representation. Rhode Island, good, good. All right, well, thank you, and we're glad that you're here. We're going to go ahead and get started with our webinar. So we have Ann Yasalonis presenting today. Ann is a horticulture agent here in Florida, and she is also the Master Gardener Coordinator. She's been with Extension in her present position since 2016, and prior to serving as the horticulture agent and Master Gardener Coordinator, she coordinated the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program in her county. She has a bachelor's in horticulture from Virginia Tech and a master's in agronomy from the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. Ann's focus is providing research-based education to the residents in her county on Florida-friendly landscaping and best management practices. She coordinates about 100 Master Gardener volunteers, and I asked her to just share with us some of the stuff she likes to do in her personal time. She runs half marathons, which is pretty amazing. She likes to explore natural areas in Florida. She's married, 3 children, and has a dog. And this is, if you know Anne, this is one of the things that definitely defines her. She is a self-described enthusiastic planner and organizer. And having worked with Anne before, I can definitely vouch for that. And we tend to like to share ideas on time management. So I'm really excited to hand this over to Anne. And Anne is going to share with us how we can create a visioning session for our volunteers.
All right. Well, thank you, Nicole. Good
Welcome.
afternoon, everybody. Hopefully this will go smoothly as I click forward through the slides. Thanks for having me today. I'm going to talk to you about a series of visioning sessions that I did with my volunteer group, and talk a little bit about how you might be able to incorporate those into your program. I hope I can give you some ideas and suggestions and offer some of that through the insight I've gained through this process that we've gone through here in Florida. Okay, Nicole, I'm trying to click.
Okay, I think you've got it, Anne.
Sorry, I don't know what it's doing now. It was working fine yesterday, of course.
Yeah, that's all right. Try progressing through the slides now. I think you've got control. I think the problem was that we were both maybe using the mouse at the same time.
Okay.
All right.
My arrow button.
There you go. You got it.
All right. Okay, so here are our objectives for today. I'm going to talk about how to conduct a facilitated visioning session and how to use the results that you gather to set goals, plan programs, and create achievable outcomes. And really, I think that a visioning session could work with a variety of groups. I did it with Master Gardener volunteers, but I think it could certainly work for 4-H volunteers, advisory committees, Master Food Nutrition volunteers, anything like that. It would definitely work. Okay, so we have a poll. I have a couple polls through this. Has anybody done a visioning session or something similar in your program? You can type your answer in the chat box. I think if you have done something, it might be a little bit different, which is good because it's a good way to get ideas from everybody else. All right.
And can you see the responses? We have some folks that say yes, some people that haven't, not yet, some people that are just getting ready to start a visioning session, and folks that are brand new to extension.
Great. Awesome. Well, hopefully this will help. All right. So if you haven't done a visioning yet or thinking about it and, kind of wondering what exactly is a visioning, I think it can mean different things to different people. I've listed a few things here, but I found a visioning session definition from the Global Development Research Center that really kind of explained what I was using the visioning session for and what it meant to me. And what they say is that visioning generates a common goal, hope and encouragement, offers a possibility for fundamental change, gives people a sense of control, gives a group something to move toward, and generates creative thinking and passion. And that really kind of envelops everything that I was looking for with the visioning session that we did here. Sorry, I think there's a lag again.
And I'll go ahead and move the slide, and we'll see if that will help.
Yeah, it was fine. I don't know what's going on. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so as Nicole mentioned, I started this position in 2016. So coming in as a new Master Gardener Coordinator, I kind of had this in the back of my brain as I was starting. So I came in with some program goals and wanted to convey those to my volunteer group. But I also wanted the Master Gardeners to feel involved in the program and share any ideas and concerns, comments that they had before we moved forward together. And I think that's why the definition on the previous slide really spoke to me and kind of described what I was wanting to do. There was a few questions that I wanted to ask of my volunteer group as I started the program. I wanted to know why they were choosing to spend their time volunteering with the Master Gardener program, and also what was motivating them to choose to be a volunteer within Extension. And I wanted them to know that I could help them be community leaders, environmental stewards, and some of the things that I had for them to achieve in my logic models that I created for my program. And I also kind of wanted us to be on the same page as we were starting. As Nicole mentioned, I was in this office prior to taking the horticulture position in 2016. So I was very familiar with the Master Gardeners here. I worked with them from 2002 to 2015, and I kind of had a feeling for what was going on. And I knew that before we could move forward, that we kind of needed to air our grievances with each other and make sure we were all starting off on the same page so that we could successfully move forward with a program that we were all really focused on together. So I also kind of knew that I wanted to do 2 visioning sessions, which is what we did. They were each about a year apart. Because I was familiar with the group, I knew that the first session that we did would contain a lot of sharing of things, pent up frustrations and issues that I feel like they just needed to have someone hear. So I knew that would be a bulk of the first session. And then the second session, maybe we could do a little bit more focusing. Okay, Nicole, can you move it to the next slide?
I can.
Okay, so our first visioning session was held in 2016. And my goal as I was starting my program was and still is to keep my volunteers engaged on the goals that I was setting and making sure that they were using their skills and their knowledge to help me reach those goals. I didn't really know much about coordinating and conducting a visioning session, so that's why I was interested in looking to a facilitated session. There is an agent in our office that had been trained to coordinate similar type of sessions. She was trained through the Florida Natural Resources Leadership Institute. I looked around a little bit on the internet. It looks like a lot of universities have very similar facilitation and leadership training courses. So you might be able to work with someone in your office or someone in your state that has been through that training, or attend one yourself if you're interested in doing that. But that was a really, really valuable resource for me to use with my visioning sessions for sure.
And this is Nicole. I'm going to try to give you the remote again, and let's see if it'll work this time. I'm not sure why there's a lag, but see if you have the ability to control the screen now.
All right.
And thank you for your patience.
Sorry, it's not. We've had a lot of internet issues today, so it might be on our end. Sorry about that.
All right, so what we'll do moving forward, is if you just let me know when you're ready to advance the slide, just say next slide, and I'll go ahead and move to the next one, okay?
Sounds good.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so our facilitators had all been through that training here in Florida. They were from different counties, and you can see they have different disciplines as well. They were all local resources in our Southwest District of Florida, so fairly local as well, which was good. I think that not only were they helping me, but they were helping hone their facilitation skills as well. So they were able to work on their facilitation techniques. And we're all able to use these sessions for conference presentations or awards. So it is a benefit to them to assist you as well, which is nice. To date, we've presented at 2 state conferences and 1 national conference on some of the things that we've done together. Okay, so what we did for our visioning session, it was pretty easy with experienced facilitators. I met with them. We met via Skype and kind of discussed what I was thinking, go over the goals for the session, and kind of figured out what data I wanted to collect from my volunteers, because we were going to conduct a survey prior to the first session. So we kind of had a focus there. The facilitators actually created, distributed, and analyzed the survey and the survey results, which is nice. I didn't have to do any of that. They were kind of having me as an outside person to this process, which I think is also really helpful in getting your master gardeners to share everything that you need to gather from them. So as a result of the survey, we were able to develop the agenda for the first visioning session. Okay, next slide. The survey was developed based on the needs that I brought to the facilitators. We asked the Master Gardener volunteers their current feelings on a number of topics. related to the program and what projects they were passionate about. We had an 89% completion rate of this initial survey, and it was all online. I know Nicole added a PDF copy of the survey to the ENG website, but they were comfortable taking everything online. And then from that, the results of the survey, we developed the agenda, and actually they developed which facilitation techniques they were going to use after analyzing those results as well. The survey also had a lot of room for comments because I wanted the Master Gardeners to feel comfortable sharing whatever was on their mind and know someone was listening to their thoughts and ideas. Next slide. So these are the categories that we were going to focus on: outreach issues, expectation issues, and leadership issues. And this all, again, came from our survey results. The Master Gardeners had shared their satisfaction or dissatisfaction on these three categories, and our agenda was focusing on those. So with those three categories, then our main agenda was focusing on the barriers and solutions within those three categories. Next slide. So we decided to conduct our visioning session at a regular meeting time. We meet every month on the same day of the week, and we have for a really long time. So we're trying to stick to a normal routine to get as many Master Gardeners involved as we could. So if they forgot that we were doing a visioning session and thought they were coming to a meeting, they showed up anyway and got to participate. So we did pretty good with that first session. Normally our meetings are about 2 hours long, and we added an extra hour and added food, which they always enjoy. I guess we added more food than normal. They would have liked more breaks. We did. You can see we gave them one 15-minute break and shared with them the agenda and everything we were doing. I think they felt very comfortable with our familiar surroundings and only adding on an hour of their day. We did have to really kind of crunch the agenda together because it could have been an entire day's worth of work. But I think asking this group to stay any longer than that wouldn't have really been effective. So 3 hours is, I think, a really good amount of time for them to spend on something like this. Next slide. So one of the things that we decided to do as one of our facilitation techniques was to do some roaming flip charts. And we set these up. They're basically, as you can see from the photos, flip charts that are set up on some easels. And they were set up before the meeting started, so Master Gardeners could kind of focus on making some easy decisions. They're kind of getting familiarized with what we're going to be doing. And the two questions that we had on the flip charts, you can see there, what kind of continuing education opportunities would you like? And what topics would you be most interested in learning about? So they're pretty easy things to get them to comment on, but they are also very useful things that we would like feedback on. They had been complaining about some of the meeting speakers and the continuing education opportunities that were offered. So I wanted to get their feedback and their interest while kind of getting them in that mode of focusing on something. Next slide. Again, the facilitators came up with the techniques that were used for the visioning sessions, and they based that purely on, what I was looking for. There are lots of techniques that can be used, and the one that we used was called roaming trade show. It was 2 rounds. For the first round, again, we're working on those 3 categories that we talked about before. The first round was listing barriers to those, and we actually assigned them to groups for the first round of the roaming trade show. And that was to kind of keep conflicting personalities apart a little bit. And for round 1, they rotated through all three groups as they were assigned. For round 2, they self-selected their groups, and they're only going into one group at this point. And the idea would be that they would select the topic that they were most interested or passionate about. Some of them that we were sort of trying to keep apart in the first round did end up together during that second round. And we did have some friction occurring, but again, the nice thing about this was that we had a trained facilitator who is very well versed at keeping personalities at check and focused on the task at hand. And as the Master Gardener Coordinator, I kept myself removed from the situation. I wanted them to be very comfortable sharing and not worry about me hovering nearby and what they might say. And again, the facilitators can run all this very smoothly for you. Next slide. Part of the role of the facilitation group was to provide a report to the Master Gardener Coordinator. So at the end, we have all of this compiled in a nice report. And I ended up sharing the results of the survey results from the beginning, as well as all of the results compiled from the visioning session with our Master Gardener group. Next slide. So from that first session, we had some really great results. From that really simple roaming flip chart activity, we had a lot of ideas of topics for monthly meeting speakers, continuing education programming, and really had a great list of what they're interested in learning more about. We came up with some summer school series out of that as well. We also came up with a visioning task force to address some of our results, and I'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. So our visioning task force is ongoing. We initially started it to take the results from the visioning session and address them and make sure that the Master Gardener volunteers saw that they went through a process and that we were going to stay on top of those things that were important to them and not just make a report and file it away. So the first things that we addressed ended up in us creating a job fair, an organizational chart with project descriptions, and actually now we've got chair descriptions and lead coordinator descriptions as well, and a Master Gardener handbook. Next slide. So job fair is one of the things that we started doing. It's a really great way to remind longtime active Master Gardeners what each project area addresses. They may forget if they get into something for too long, they forget what other people are doing maybe. It also helps introduce our new Master Gardeners to all of our projects. It's kind of an annual update for our project areas. The Master Gardeners staff recruiting tables and encourage other Master Gardener volunteers to allocate their time to that project, get them interested, and we do require them to sign up for at least one project annually. I know Nicole and Judy will be talking about that more in October. Our job fairs have been really successful, so I'm interested in getting even more ideas from them in October. We also created our handbook and organizational chart. I don't remember anything that's not written down, so I felt it was really important for not only the Master Gardeners to have this, but me as well. And truthfully, it makes me realize that I need to tell everyone the same thing. If I'm answering a question, I can myself look it up and say, oh, yep, that's the answer, and keeps me on task that way as well. Our state office provided us with a template for both of these, and we've now used both the handbook and the organizational chart for about 2 years, and I think we're on our 4th revision of both of those. So, it's something that we're continually working on. The handbook really helps to minimize some of the assumptions that Master Gardeners make, or questions that they can really quickly get answered on their own with that handbook. And the organizational chart helps them also understand the layout of our program structure and helps them realize where to allocate hours as they're logging in and tracking those hours in our computer system. Next slide. So we did a second visioning session about 1 year later. I kind of wanted to see if we've made a difference in some of the things that we had done in that first year. I wanted to see if the items and activities we developed that, as a result of session 1 were working well. Were there still similar barriers to volunteerism? Did we help with a few of those? Were there project needs that weren't being met? Kind of wanted to see what was going on a year out. Next slide. So at this point, we had our org chart and had really revised our list of projects and continue to do that a little bit. And some of these projects, they were deemed very important on surveys, but we're still not being fully staffed. So we were going to try and focus on some project areas to move forward. So this visioning session was more about addressing specific project priorities. Next slide. We sent out another survey. The questions were the same, but we had an additional question about their current feelings. You can see there if anything has changed over the course of the year. And again, the facilitators compiled and sent out the survey to develop our next agenda for this visioning session. And there was an 82% completion rate of this survey, so really similar. Next slide. Something I found really interesting through both surveys was that the motivations for volunteering remain the same. In fact, they were almost down to the exact percentage. And those motivations were enjoying the fellowship of the organization, and enjoying teaching the community about gardening. And there were some improvements to those barriers to volunteerism that we addressed in that 2016 visioning session. So that was good. Next slide. So we took some of that survey data and decided to focus on a specific project. The Master Gardeners rated our events project a priority project for them in 2016 and 2017, yet it was a project we were really not getting much participation in, and had never had an actual chair for that project as well. So I was trying to figure out, why do we feel this is important? And if it is important, how can we increase participation? Next slide. So our second visioning session was definitely not as successful. There were a few differences. We had to change our location of our meeting, and that always throws a wrench in things for people. So we get a lot less attendance if we have to change our location. Time was the same. It was the same length of time, not as much food. That was probably also a problem. And then 59% of the Master Gardeners that responded to the survey did not participate in the 2016 session. So that could be some of the difference as well. They also might have been tired of me serving them and asking them to come to these sessions. But anyway, we move forward. Next slide. And conducted a visioning session using 2 facilitation techniques that the facilitators decided upon when they saw how we were going to focus this session. So the 2 activities that we did a think, pair, share. And this is when you have a specific question, the volunteers think about it, then they pair up, the person sitting next to them, and share their ideas with each other. And then our facilitator would then share those with the group. Could do that with a lot of different sizes of audiences. We also did a World Cafe style session, and we have a table host in each group that does not move, and the small groups of Master Gardeners traveled to work with those table hosts. So the table host stays at the table and poses a question, and you can see the question there. How do we increase participation in the activities that we were talking about that day, the events project? And the group will discuss, and the host takes notes that we then capture and bring forth to the whole group at the end. So they were very different facilitation techniques than the previous session as well. Next slide. And while I do think there were many variables that made this second visioning session less successful than the first one, I was able to pull a few suggestions from that session and implement those. So we made some of the changes that you can see there that have helped boost that project up a little bit. Not quite as much as I would have liked, but it was good to see the differences in the visioning sessions for sure. This wasn't as successful as the first. In total, I think they were very successful. Next slide. We don't have any plans to conduct another visioning session. I think I got a lot of data from both of those sessions. We certainly do plan to keep our task force working on our barriers with volunteering in our program. We're continuing to meet monthly to address our new issues that arise. Many of those are coming as a result of our annual Master Gardener survey. So I started that in 2017 as well, and plan to continue those annual surveys. I worked with Maxine Hunter, who's a horticulture agent here in Marion County, Florida, and she had done a SWOT analysis, and I decided that perhaps that would be a way to continue on gathering some of this information rather than longer intensive type visioning sessions. So we have sent out a SWOT analysis, and I'm offering it online or on paper, and we're collecting responses now. And this is going to be something that we'll start doing every 3 to 5 years to make sure we stay on top of addressing issues. And I think this will be a really successful way to continue to collect this information, yet not, take the time to do the longer visioning sessions. I thought the visioning sessions were very helpful. The task force is in place to help the volunteers remain engaged and aware of our goals. I've started to share my annual goals with the Master Gardener volunteers. I think it helps them to see that and show that the accomplishments on my report are their accomplishments as well. We developed a one-page infographic that shares the stats and contributions of our Master Gardener program, so they can see that they're valuable to Extension as well. I plan to keep them involved in the planning of their program and make sure they're all comfortable at all times sharing their thoughts and opinions. You can see there you'll get lots and lots of comments if you open that up to them. We had comments, we took comments on our first visioning session survey, but not on our second. So be aware that they like to share them, good or bad, and I find them all really helpful, actually. And I just want them to realize that, regardless of how we're moving forward together, we all have the same mission, same vision throughout the state of Florida. And we're working together to make it the best program that we can have. Next slide. As I mentioned before, I had that definition of what visioning was for my program. Yours might be the same, could be different, but I still think it would be really helpful for you in your volunteer program. Even if you're just trying to gather a little bit of data from them, I don't think it has to be anything too intense, particularly if you're starting off with just one session, just trying to get a new group together, moving forward together. It's a good idea to get their feedback, certainly at the beginning of a new coordinator coming in. Next slide. Some potential additions that I'm thinking about with my Master Gardener volunteers. I'm thinking about maybe doing some personality tests. Sometimes these are fun. I think in particular, I really enjoy the 4 tendencies test. It's really easy to do. I think the results are really easy to understand and apply to work style, volunteer style. And there are lots and lots of personality type additions that you maybe could offer your chairs or your board members at minimum. But I've added some links there so you can kind of look through and see how long they might take, how intense they might be. Again, I think the 4 tendencies is pretty straightforward and easy to fill out for most people. Next slide. I have a list of references here. There were some other state programs as I started researching what I wanted to do when I was starting my program here and developing the visioning session. There's some program plans, some strategic plans that I thought were really helpful. So take a look at those. Hopefully they'll help you kind of figure out which way you want to go with your visioning session. Next slide. So we have another poll. After this session, do you plan on conducting a visioning session with your Master Gardener program? You think it might be something that you are interested in doing? You can go to the next slide. If you're still kind of on the fence about it, the next slide, I have a lot of items I'm happy to share with you. If you ever have any questions about anything, a few of these things we have added to the EMG website, but I, again, have lots of files available. If you're interested in any of those, I'm happy to share whatever I have with you, and hopefully you can make it a very successful session for your group and really get a lot of information out of it like I have. Next slide. So this is my contact information. If you want to get any of those examples or have any other questions about anything, I'm happy again to share anything with you. I hope this was really helpful for you. I'm really glad I did a visioning session. I'm actually glad I did 2 of them, even though the second one wasn't as successful. It really, gave me a lot of insight on what we were doing. And if anybody has any other questions, I'm happy to take those at this time.
And this is Nicole. We have a question or a comment in the chat box that sharing examples will be great. Show where again. So I'm going to pull up the EMG page where we have some of the resources that you shared. But if people want specifics or that entire sort of visioning starter kit, they can email you, right, Anne?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And does anyone have any questions? We'll open it up to Q&A. You could unmute your phones and talk with us or type a question in the chat box. I have a question for you, Anne. I noticed on your survey that you did have open-ended questions. And first of all, I think you're very brave for doing this process, especially being a brand new Extension Master Gardener coordinator when you did begin this. How did you make sense of all of the open-ended responses? I mean, I can imagine with 2 questions, what do you like and what do you not like? You're going to get a lot of different answers. So how did you go through that?
We did. We got a lot of nice answers and a lot of not so nice answers, and I'm totally fine hearing not so nice answers. I find them very helpful, and I'm not really bothered by them. We did that with the first visioning session just because I felt like they all just really wanted to share whatever was on their mind, good or bad, related, unrelated. As I mentioned, I had been around them for many years, so I knew that they had some friction, and I think it really helped them to just share it, whether it was directed at me or not.
Any other questions for Anne? Anne, is there anything that you would do differently if you did a visioning session again?
I think I would have made some changes to the second one for sure. I still think it was important that we tried to focus a little bit on the second session to get more data. But I think that just all of the information, comments and things that they shared with me from the first session were really helpful to start moving forward and addressing things that I knew were barriers or didn't know that were barriers to them volunteering. So we kind of started the ball rolling there. And while we didn't get a lot from that second session, we kept moving it forward through the task force. And through that annual survey, I'm asking them very similar questions, basically trying to make sure that they enjoy volunteering with us, that it's as easy as it can be, how can we make it easier, those types of things. So continually addressing the information that you get from your session, I think, is really important.
Great point. I'm going to pull up real quick on the EMG page, the EMG coordinators page. Here you can see where we've got Anne's contact information. Can you all see that? Hopefully my screen is still sharing. Anne, do you see this page?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So you can see here we have a copy of the PowerPoint. Anne was gracious enough to share her questionnaire. So there's a PDF link to that on the site. There's also a quick reference guide for hosting the World Cafe, and that's that activity where she had the question and then folks went around and talked to each other. And she also included her org chart, which kind of helps the Master Gardeners understand the structure of the program. So thanks, Anne, for providing all of those resources to us. Any other questions or comments for Anne? Okay. All right, well, we will record the webinar. We'll post the link on the website and on the YouTube channel, and I'll email it to everyone on the EMG listserv. If you have any questions after the webinar, feel free to contact Anne for questions on visioning sessions. If you have questions about upcoming EMG webinars or you'd like to present or just ideas for other topics, feel free to contact me. And I thank you all for being on the call today and tuning in. I know we're all very busy, especially after some of us came back from the conference in Madison, but this is just a great opportunity to hear what works and maybe what might not work in different programs and to get ideas from each other. So thanks again. I hope everyone has a fantastic rest of your week and take care. Thank you, Anne, for being on the call today and presenting.
Sorry, I don't know what was going on with the mouse.
That is okay.